Hello friends, this is my part 2 lecture of my topic Negritude, which in the first part I discussed about the evolution of the Negritude movement and how the three pillars of the Negritude movement, Aimé, César, Daman, and then you had Senghor. These three people played a very significant role, and they are considered to be the three pillars of Negritude movement. I also talked about that how Negritude, the term Negritude and the movement Negritude was not only a literary movement but also a political movement. I also discussed that how significant Negritude movement played an important role in the growth and development of apartheid movement. So these were some of the outlines, these were some of the main topics that I discussed in my previous lecture on Negritude. And carrying from the previous lecture, I will now talk about the timeline of Negritude movement. Dear friends, I feel that this timeline is very important if one wants to understand properly the concept of Negritude movement. Which of course was both a political and a literary movement. It all started around 1923 and it gained a lot of momentum. And one more thing that we should never forget is that Negritude is somehow associated with diaspora, because in my last lecture I talked about Negritude as a movement with its epicenter in Paris. So Paris was the epicenter where all the people met there, and they belonged from different nationalities, African nationalities and American nationalities, and they met at Paris. Paris became the focal point, the epicenter, and how all these people faced this racist discrimination in their respective countries, and they were facing also the same racist discrimination in France, and how this led to the growth of the development of Negritude as a movement, both in literature and in politics, and having its epicenter in Paris. This is what I discussed in my last lecture. So we should remember certain words. For example, the Negritude precursors, the forerunners, the pillars of Negritude movement were basically the diasporic people. And the second point that we should remember is Negritude played a very important role in the development of apartheid movement. And the third important part that Negritude movement played was a very close relation with the Harlem Renaissance. Now, I will definitely discuss about Harlem Renaissance in one of my video lectures, where I'll try to relate the Negritude movement and the Harlem Renaissance. And apartheid, as I have already discussed in one of my lectures. You can refer to my previous videos and can watch my video on apartheid, and you'll get an idea that how Negritude movement played a significant part in apartheid movement. Now here, one more point I would like to mention here is that apartheid basically was a movement in South Africa, whereas Negritude was a pan-world movement. It was a movement which started from Paris, it spread to the different parts of the world and played a very significant role in giving the voiceless, the marginalized Africans, the blacks, their due respect, due place in the society. So Negritude as a movement played a very, very significant role in that. So this particular lecture, I am talking about the timeline of Negritude movement. So my lectures, this is the part 2 lecture of my this is carrying on from part 1. So in order to understand the concept of Negritude, the growth and development of Negritude, it is very important that before you watch this lecture of mine, you watch the other lecture, that is Negritude part 1. And in this Negritude part 2, I am talking about the timeline of Negritude movement. When did it start? How did it move? Which are the years that played a very significant role? So first I will start with the year around 1923. Gentlemen Paulette and Jean Nardel, they started a Clamart Salon. Now this Clamart Salon became the center where artists, writers and other intellectuals throughout the black diaspora came together and discussed what are ultimately the ideals of the Negritude movement. So you can very well understand the importance of Clamart Salon. It is the place from where you can say the birth of Negritude movement in Paris took place, started. It's the Clamart Salon around 1923. Now, then we go to 1931. What happened in 1931 is Aimé Césaire, Leo Damas, and Leopold Senghor. These are the, as I have already discussed in my previous lecture, Césaire, Damas, and Leopold Senghor. These are the three stalwarts, these three pillars of the Negritude movement. They meet in Paris in 1931. That's why 1931 is very significant. Now, moving on from 1931, let us proceed to 1931. One more incident that happened, that is Nadal and Dr. Leo Sajo. They began to publish Rouvre du Monde Noir. Rouvre du Monde Noir, that is the review of the black world, which began to promote, to provoke the thought for the movement, the Negritude movement. So that is how 1931 also is very, very significant. Then let us move from 1931 to 1934. In 1934, Aimé Césaire launched the magazine La Elodie Noire. La Elodie Noire, we can translate in English as the Black Student, along with Leo Damas and the Senegalese Leopold Senghor. They launched a magazine, and the name of the magazine was La Elodie Noire, that is the Black Student, in 1934. So that is how 1934 becomes very significant. From 1934, let us move to 1937. Leo Damas published his very famous work called Pigments. In Pigments, he argues against slavery, against colonial assimilation, against segregation, and the rejection of the cultural self. So this is very significant. In 1937, Leo Damas published Pigments, because Pigments is very significant. It's you can say precursor. It raised the basic questions against slavery, colonial assimilation, segregation, and the rejection of cultural self in 1937. Now, moving on to 1937, let us move to 1939. What happened in 1939? Aimé Césaire, she coined the term Negritude in his famous work, that is Notebook of a Return to a Native Land. So in 1939, Aimé Césaire coined the term Negritude, on which I'm presently giving the lecture. He coined the term in 1939, Negritude, in his famous work Notebook of a Return to the Native Land. Now let us move from 1939 to 1947. What happened in 1947? Of course, our country got independent. After a long British rule, India gained independence. But that 1947 is also significant from the Negritude point of view, Negritude movement point of view. What happened? Senghor and Césaire, two out of the three pillars, with the encouragement with a host of the French intellectuals, they founded a journal. What is the name of the journal? Présence Africaine. So in 1947, Senghor and Césaire, out of the three stalwarts, they founded stalwarts of the pillars of the Negritude movement. They founded a journal. The journal's name is Présence Africaine in 1947. Now, after 1947, let us move to 1948, which is very significant from the Negritude movement point of view, because Senghor's Anthology of New Black and Malagasy Poetry in French language was published. This is very significant. 1948, Senghor's Anthology of New Black and Malagasy Poetry in the French language was published. This is significant because it opened the discussion for people from African descent to become educated as a different form of freedom. This is 1948. And in 1948, one more significant thing happened. The Jean-Paul Sartre, he sums up and analyzes the Negritude movement in an essay titled Orphénoi, that is Black Orpheus. In 1960, 1960 is the high water mark in Negritude movement, because one of the three pillars of Negritude movement, Léopold Senghor, became the first elected president of the Republic of Senegal in 1960. That is how 1960 is very, very significant from the Negritude point of view. So, in this lecture, I have tried to give you the timeline of Negritude movement, which started around 1923 with a salon called the Clamart Salon, which provided the place, the base, where all the intellectuals, the artists, the writers throughout the black world, the black diaspora, they came and discussed, and this paved the way, this smoothened the way, this gave the new direction of how to launch this movement, make this movement a successful one, because this was not only a political movement, not only a literary movement, but also a political movement. So in this lecture, I tried to give you a timeline of the Negritude movement starting around 1923 till 1960, when Senghor was the first elected president. He became the first elected president. He was the first elected president in 1960 of the Republic of Senegal. Friends, it is my earnest request, if you like this video, I'm sure I give you this word that I'll try my level best to prepare as many videos on as many topics that I can. And if you have your own requests, please do write in the comment section as to on what topic would you like a video from my side. It might take time, but definitely I will try to come up to your expectation and prepare top videos on the topics that you wish to listen from me. It will be an honor for me. It will be a pleasure for me. And it would be very kind of you. It is my earnest request that if you like this video, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is Dr. Saikat Banerjee signing off. Thank you very much for watching this video.